Hey everybody, I hope y'all are having a great time at MagnoliaJS 2021. My name is Richard Sween, and I'm an engineering manager at Copus Mobile. And today I'd like to talk to you about our approach to user-centered design and how it works for us. So just really quickly, what is Copus Mobile? We're a small business located here in the Jackson, Mississippi area that builds apps and app-enabled hardware for military and first responders. Our tools have to be rugged and easy to use, and so our approach to product development has to reflect that. So before we get started, let's take a look at some of the alternative ways of doing things. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen a diagram like this before. This is your classic waterfall model of software development. You start at the top with requirements gathering, and then you flow down into design, implementation, testing, and maintenance. It's a very linear model. Occasionally you'll see arrows pointing the other way as well, but you still only can move from one step to the next. One problem with this model, however, is the implied lack of end user interaction. Once you finish the requirements gathering phase, you may not talk to the users again until you're ready to hand over the software. And the big issue that comes out of this is that if you only talk to the users here, there's a really good chance that by the time you get here, you'll have built something that the users don't want or weren't expecting. We can also look at this from a financial perspective as well. According to a study done by the National Institutes for Standards and Technology, an issue found during the pre-release or maintenance phase costs an average of 15 to 30 times as much to fix as resolving the issue during the requirements and design phase. So there's a huge cost savings to be had by resolving as many potential issues as possible as early as possible. You want to take this opportunity to reduce risk in the requirements and design phase. And this is a diagram that I saw for the first time last year, and I really liked the metaphor. For those of you who don't know or haven't seen this picture before, during World War II, the military was trying to figure out how to add armor to their aircraft. So they commissioned a study to catalog all the damage that aircraft that returned to base had, and they plotted it on a diagram like this. So all of the red dots are where damage happened. And so you might think that that's where we need to put the armor, is where all these red dots are, so on the wings and the tail. But there's a mathematician working for the military named Abraham Wald, who pointed out that we're not getting the whole picture with this data. He said that we're only looking at aircraft that make it back to base. So any aircraft that was too damaged to make it back, we don't have that data. And so the places that we want to armor on the aircraft are probably the cockpit and the engines, because if those get damaged, there's a good chance that the aircraft won't make it back. So if we relate this to software development, maybe we're talking to a PM or a business analyst, maybe we're talking to other team members, maybe we're even talking to a certain category of user. But if we're not talking to all of our users and all of our different types of users, then we're not getting the whole picture. We're focusing on the wrong data points. We're putting armor on the wrong parts of the plane. So that brings us to user-centered design. So what is user-centered design? For Copus Mobile and the process that we follow, it's a cyclical model that involves the users at every step of the process. We begin with an interview phase, we go into testing, feedback, and then improvements. Let's talk through each one of those stages. First off is interviewing. At Copus Mobile, we really like to meet the users where they work in their environment, talking to them about what their problems are, what works for them, what doesn't work, what their ideal solution to whatever problem might look like. It's really important for us to see them in their environment so we can see things that they might not even realize are issues or things that we can help solve. For these types of meetings, oftentimes it is useful to have some really rough prototype or some storyboards to kind of focus the conversation on. If you do that, be careful not to put too much thought into it or not too much of your own ideas into it, because you don't want to sway the users. You don't want to color what they are telling you with your own biases. Next is the testing phase. So we collect all that information that we got from the interviews, and we start drawing some just some hand drawings and some sketches. We iterate on those internally a little bit. And then we turn those into mockups using Adobe XD. The real nice thing about using a tool like Adobe XD is that it allows us to mock up not only the interfaces, but also the workflow. So we can show the users um, not just what the screens look like, but what their day-to-day using the tool might look like. And then we go into feedback. So we'll take those mockups, maybe videos, showing walkthroughs of the potential interface, and we'll show those to the users and get their feedback. Oftentimes during this, we'll get new requirements. What can it do this? Well, what if it did this instead? And it's really important for us to catch things that we missed and make sure that we understood what the user was telling us in the interview phases. And then once we get all this information, we'll collect it and we'll go back and we'll iterate several times potentially on that interface. Each time, hopefully, getting closer to what the actual and the end user actually wants. So let's walk through a quick real world example. A few years ago, we had to design the interface for a handheld navigation device. We were responsible for both the digital and physical user interfaces. That was kind of an interesting challenge for us, since the physical form factor and the screens were both kind of changing at the same time. The device had to support moving maps, so think something like Google Maps on your phone, as well as waypoints and other location-based features. But these are the two things I'm going to focus on today: are the moving maps, the map screen, and the waypoint screen. So here are our initial mock-ups of these two screens. So on the left we have the map, and on the right we have the waypoint. So some of the features we had included a status bar that had the date and location, and battery and signal strength and some other things on every screen. We had the sidebar that had their current location and some other information on it, and this cursor that moved around and showed which direction you were facing. This was really good. We learned a lot from this interface. The first thing we learned was that the icons we chose were confusing. The users didn't really understand what they were supposed to be doing when they tapped on those buttons. The compass indicator they said was distracting, wouldn't be useful to have in the status bar all the time. And while we thought it would be really cool to be able to take a photo and attach it to a waypoint, they didn't want the device to have a camera at all. So we took that feedback and we iterated on it. We added a compass to the map screen, which is the one place where they said that compass would be useful. We swapped out the icons for text labels, except for the auto rotate, which is something that we're familiar with on our cell phones, and they were familiar with as well. And we fleshed out the waypoint screen some more. So we obviously took the camera buttons out and we mocked up what a keyboard would look like for text input. And we thought we had a really good idea here of if any of you remember what texting was like before you had smartphones, you had the keys where you would press multiple times on each button to change which letter you were choosing. And we thought this was a really good use of the limited screen real estate. So you'd have nice big buttons, easy to touch. Um, and we were wrong. They absolutely hated that idea. They said even if it was took a little more time or was a little more work, they would much rather have a regular keyboard than trying to do the old school texting for text input. Some other things that we missed that they didn't like was the compass. It took up too much of the screen, so they wanted to make sure that they could see as much of the map as possible behind it. Our signal indicator didn't really give them a lot of useful information, something they could take action on. And we had these two icons for position on the map. We had the triangle, which was your position, and then we also had this cursor that you could move around on the map. But there was no way to tell what the location of that cursor was. So we went back and we iterated again. And this was the third version of the interface that we came up with. So we dropped the scale entirely and we made the compass semi-transparent so you could see through it and you could see the map behind it. We added a position indicator for the cursor, so whenever the cursor was active, you could see what the coordinates were. And we changed the signal strength indicator for an accuracy measurement, which actually gave them some information they could use to make decisions on the data that they were seeing. And of course, we added the keyboard as requested. So what's the lesson here? Our user-centered design process, going from interviews through testing, feedback, and improvements, helped us deliver a better product for the end user. Because if we hadn't talked to our users, if we'd never tested our assumptions, we would have delivered our initial interface, which our users did not like, instead of our final prototype, which they did like. So, in conclusion, talk to your users. Again, I'm Richard Sween. I'm at underscore Richard Sween on Twitter. And you can follow us at Cobus Mobile at cobusmobile.com and at Cobus Mobile on social media. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the show. Show? It's not a show. What's wrong with me?